yeah, sure, next gen is going to be interesting with all the major graphical improvements and audio design and all the Unreal Engine 5 tech demos that we're going to see. But I think it's also going to be fascinating when we see the amount of quality from new first-party studios. As we know, Microsoft and Sony have been on a bit of a spending spree, Microsoft especially, and one of the newly acquired studios in-house will be NXile, with Wasteland 3 actually being one of the last multi-platform games, at least we assume, with that merger now happening. And what's quite interesting about this is that Microsoft have been so massively instrumental in the development of Wasteland 3. So obviously this is being designed as a massive multi-party game, but it's really sort of a step, I think, in the right direction and a really exciting point in Exile's future. Because basically, as Brian Fargo put it when I spoke to him at Gamescom, you know, Microsoft gave us a load of cash, go make the best game you possibly can. And honestly, having spent a bit of time with the demo, having a bit of time with the beta, I can honestly say this is, for me, one of the most anticipated RPGs of the year. I'm really, really excited to spend more time and just lose myself in the world of Wasteland 3. I've been a fan of the Wasteland game since the original. I've also been playing Wasteland Remastered, which just recently came out, and that's well worth checking out, and we'll dedicate future videos to that as well. But Wasteland 3 was just a fantastic game, and that's also recently come out on Switch as well, if you've not played that yet. Wasteland 3, though, is just shaping up to be, well, the best Wasteland yet, quite frankly. I'm really, really invested. So this video is basically just going to walk you through the opening section within the beta. So basically what you're going to see is you're going to see the opening battles, you're going to see some of the character interactions and choices, and you're going to see how the squad-based missions actually work. And one key thing to note before we get into this is that the difference with Wasteland 3 compared to perhaps other tactical shooters is that at the beginning you choose 2 characters. So you can either customize 2 characters, but there are also several presets. And I've gone for the father and daughter combo here, which might seem a little reminiscent to perhaps of a Last of Us style. But basically the father figure you've just seen there is he's a melee fighter, so he's got a big knife and he runs up to enemies and attacks them, whereas the daughter is actually a sniper. So they're a really nice combination. I thought they were a really cool way to effectively show you what can be achieved with 2 different characters. But you can customize them however you see fit. Characters can have multiple different backgrounds. They can have sort of perks and benefits depending on what they sort of specialize in. They've got different weapon sets. You can define what weapon they start with, the character portrait, what they look like. It's really quite clever and really quite awesome what you can actually customize and change and tweak. But as I've mentioned as well, there are also presets if you just want to dive straight into the game, and that's completely fine, whatever you prefer to do. But yeah, as I say, we spent quite a lot of time with Wasteland 3 between the demo at Gamescom, between this, and as you've seen there, I had to fight a massive robot creature and I just wiped it out with a massive bomb strike. That was awesome. But that sort of gives you an idea of what the combat is like in Wasteland 3 to begin with. Essentially, you're sort of seeing there, it's turn-based as you would expect. It's kind of XCOM-ish style. You use cover a lot. And basically, you just have to try and position yourself in the right places so you get the most effective strikes, and also run the risk, try not to run the risk too much of being killed, especially with a melee fighter who literally has to run straight up to his enemies and attack them with a knife. That can be quite dangerous, especially when you do have, robots and drones and all sorts of things trying to kill you and wipe you off the face of the planet. But as I've said, I feel like this is the best possible Wasteland game that inXile could create. I mean, obviously this is a great franchise, but I feel like this is slightly different. I mean, there's kind of if I was to compare it, I would say it kind of has the humour of a Borderlands a little bit, although it's actually funnier than Borderlands. And also it kind of gives you that Fallout feel, the old school Fallout feel. And they just sort of, those two sort of feelings really merged together to give what I feel is a really effective RPG, and possibly for me, the RPG of the year. I mean, obviously that's a bold claim. We don't know everything that's coming out this year, especially with next gen. But certainly from what I've played and I know is coming, I'm super hyped for Wasteland 3. But yeah, I mean, as you've just sort of seen there, you can get some ambush strikes in. So in some cases, you have to walk within circle perimeter to start combat. But if you time it right, you don't ever actually have to enter that turn-based combat. You can actually wipe out an enemy in the overworld without even having any damage inflicted. So if you play it smart, you can really play Wasteland 3 to your advantage. And as I say, you know, this is a bigger, louder, more dynamic, it's a fully voice-acted Wasteland. It's more polished now that Microsoft have been involved. As you know, this did get delayed a little bit already, and this is for more finer polish again. So this beta is already pretty sweet, and I'm imagining it's going to just get better and better as you know, NXL and Microsoft get to spend more and more time with it. But the way it's been designed, the control scheme, obviously the older Wasteland games probably felt more akin to, you know, the keyboard and mouse style, but this feels much more like it's been tailored to a controller, which is absolutely fine. It's not been dumbed down, I don't think. It's just well, actually, before I continue with that, I mean, that gives you an example of the choices, and because my characters only had a certain amount of abilities in there, they didn't actually have the hard ass or the kiss ass abilities, which you can earn over time and get points for. My only option was literally to kill the bandit, but in a previous playthrough I've actually had it so I've been able to let the bandit run free, and then the bandit's gone and told his mates that actually, you know, that there are intruders and to get ready for them. So it's kind of worked in both ways, but it does mean that the civilian actually does stay alive in that instance, whereas in this case, unfortunately, that civilian has died. But it kind of gives you a feel and idea of the kind of choices that are available to you in Wasteland 3, and I imagine there's many more choices to come, you know, in future builds and obviously when the full game is released. But I mean, one thing I love about this, and you're kind of getting a glimpse of it here, is the weather effects. I mean, it just makes the game look stunning. You're in a kind of like a snow-peaked environment, and you see a lot of snowstorms come through. You see the effect of the flames there. You know, the close-ups on characters. It just looks so damn stunning. And you know, when that propulsion blast that you saw at the beginning of this video, I mean, that's really impactful. But I mean, this is also a really graphic game. I mean, I was really surprised at how, you know, violent it was, and you know, it sort of really depicts a proper post-apocalyptic wasteland as you would expect. So I mean, it's fully suited. It makes sense, but there's really a strong narrative underpinning all of it as well. And I think, you know, when you come to see that, you see the 100% there. What I can do if I take that shot, I've actually wiped him out immediately there. But what I probably could have done in that situation to make it even more impactful is to blow up that propulsion tank, a propane tank, sorry, and, you know, take out everyone with like a wild burst of flame and really just set everything off. But yeah, I mean, I think that with Wasteland 3, you know, that this is just it's a well-suited game. It's a hard-hitting game. There's a strong story there. There seems to be a lot of side quests, and you know, there's lots of things you can do and interact with the world. Like, for instance, you can actually create yellow snow if you want to. So you can pick up a snowboard, you can actually pee in it, and then you can throw it at an enemy, and it actually does have destabilizing effects. Which, yeah, it just little details like that were just crazy to me. But that's the kind of thing about Wasteland 3. It's full of amazing and sometimes unexpected and quirky and even vulgar things to do. So if you really take the time to sort of deep dive into it, you can find there's a lot, you know, bubbling under the surface there. But I think Wasteland 3 is kind of the next evolution of the RPG, and I think it's a nice, potentially big transitionary RPG for the next generation. And I think this is kind of how, you know, these types of games really do begin to find their home on consoles now, where years ago, I mean, they used to just be exclusive to PC, but I think now that developers are finding clever ways to map them to controllers and make them feel like a good fit on consoles and get the most out of them. And Wasteland 3 really feels like the next evolution of that, and it really feels like a deep, fulfilling RPG that you might have found on, you know, in PCs in the 90s and the noughties. But it's completely playable, fully playable, and in many regards could even be best playable on console. But it also pays a lot of respect and homage to the originals. There's an authenticity to it that really likens it to, you know, the classics, and you know, it plays. If those who've played Wasteland 1 and 2 will really find a home here, I think, with the vehicles and the weather effects and the big, you know, environmental, you know, things that you can destroy. It just looks stunning. But there, of course, it's still a top-down view. It's still turn-based gameplay. You know, and depending on what perks you've got, you know, you can find traps in the environment if you walk close enough. Sometimes you might actually have to, if you've got the skill set, you might be able to disarm those traps. It all just really comes together smoothly and succinctly. I think what I found really fun about this most of all is that the buddy system is also really unique as well. So certainly I think there's a lot to be said about the way that this has been approached to make this feel familiar and yet different at the same time. What you see in this sequence on the screen here is actually sort of reminiscent of how bloody and graphic this game can be. There's some really sensitive scenes in here for sure. Now, of course, like with any other RPG, you can upgrade your gear, you can equip different things for characters. Give you a quick look at the inventory system there. I've picked up a lot of junk. I've picked up a lot of ammo that's going to be useful for weapons at a later point. But there's also grenades. There's little quest items and also things you can trade and take into to vendors to sell and to get more money and such. But yeah, there's the grenade as well, which you might have just sort of caught a glimpse of there as well, which is also a really effective weapon in battle. And of course, there's lots of, and of course there's things to read and whatnot. Your skill tree, your attributes there, everything. Oh wow, look at that. See how that's the graphicness right there. Really sort of the zaniness certainly is prevalent throughout. But you can also add characters to parties. So for instance, going back to the choice situation, it may be that certain enemy that you've encountered could actually become an ally at some point if you want them to. And we're actually told at Gamescom as well that the one character actually had 1,000 lines of spoken dialogue in the game based on the different choices. And this is not like a main character. This is kind of like a sub-character. There's a lot of spoken dialogue and dialogue crafted for individual characters in here. So there's a lot of choice available to you depending on what kind of classes you build and what you do within the confines of the game. So really fascinating stuff, and I think it's just one of the ways that Wasteland 3 really sort of improves on its predecessor. The inventory management that you've just kind of seen is much better than anything that's been done before from In Exile. There's more of a traditional drag and drop system in place that really again is maps well to a controller, but also really does suit a mouse and a keyboard. The combat, being able to move between allies is really crucial, and it really sort of helps you, it constantly flows. And I think it's sort of really, it's something that people really feel comfortable with now with the likes of XCOM in the world, and again, like games like Gears Tactics, which we've also previously covered. You'd also have to be mindful of like kind of percentages that are above enemies' heads, so to make sure you're getting the most effective strikes in and you're doing the best possible damage you can in any particular situation. But I think that was really crucial is that cover is really emphasized a lot in this as well. Again, sort of hearkening to the XCOM and Gears Tactics, they really try to use cover as a basis to protect yourself in these situations. There's also interestingly as well, precision strikes have returned, and then once powered up you can actually choose an enemy's body target to target, again similar to the Fallout VAT system. So we've mentioned the similarities with Fallout and Borderlands, and you can actually target an area of the body to shoot off and blow off, and that can also be done in slow-mo as well, so you can see that kind of slow-mo reaction to take an enemy down. But these graphics are just so enhanced, and there's a real the real effects. This post-apocalyptic world is just it really feels like somewhere where you don't necessarily want to be, but it's also a world you feel compelled to explore. There's small little environments to explore, like small vaults. There's side quests, as we've mentioned. All little touches that really make the game seem spacious and massive and expansive, and you can get the most out of it as much as you want, or you can take as little as you want of it. You can follow the story straight through. There's no pressure either way. But I think for me, like I've said, actually, this is an interesting little cutscene here. So you're going to enter this sort of scripted sequence, and you're actually going to also get a close-up and chat to an enemy. So it's not just, you don't just get the full top-down view. You actually don't just get to see portraits. You actually get to see the characters close-up, and you get to see them fully animated. So that's going to come up now. And I think this is kind of reserved for the big characters you encounter throughout your story.
Howdy, Hotlander.
So yeah, the dialogue there, you're kind of getting a real feel for that now.
Long distance. I like like it best when the deluge of blood happens.
I think the combat just feels incredibly strategic and satisfying. I say there's lots of missions to dive into. There's real biting wit and dark humour, and I think it all feels accessible though, which I think is so crucial. And you can see the melee combat, because I'm proficient at melee combat. I was able to. There was a dialogue choice there that wouldn't necessarily be available to other people, and I've really riled him up here by the looks of things here. So that didn't necessarily work. Well, I don't know. That could have worked in my favour if I really wanted to just get into a fight in that situation. But I mean, there's ways as well that you could also kind of avoid confrontation. But this is also, this sequence is I think these characters that you're introduced to, they really, the Dorseys especially. Oh, wow. There's that graphicness I was telling you about. Literally half his head just blown apart on screen, his blood splattering everywhere. Yeah, this is the Wasteland 3 that you're going to be dealing with. This is different from Wasteland games in the past for sure. But you're going to see the strategic combat now, so the kind of the grid structure is back in place now, and you don't just get the free movement within the overworld now. You actually have to prepare yourself and tactically prepare for it in each situation. So I've chosen to defend myself there so that I'm more protected when enemies come to me or try to attack me. That I'm going to be a bit more aware, and my ally is not going to be so badly bashed about, so to speak. But I think that this is also going to show you that Wasteland 3 does have some tough battles, and these are not going to be walks in the park. I mean, there is 4 difficulty sets in total, so you're not just going to be able to walk through this, or you can challenge yourself if you think that one of the difficulties is just a bit too easy, or you can lower it down admittedly as well if you're finding it too hard. But I think one of the cool things I really do, and I want to emphasize this again, is the use of environmental effects and being able to shoot at things and fight back and really kind of use the environment to your advantage. So it's not just about using cover, it's also about using those propane tanks, and it's also about finding the angles at which you can get those snipe shots in. I mean, the father figure has been risky there. He's gone right in for the kill, but look how open he's left himself. Because he's got nowhere to hide and he's run out of action points. And again, like these types of XCOM games and Gears Tactics, this relies on action points in order for you to do anything. If you haven't got those, you're in a lot of trouble, especially if you're in an open situation like I am here. But battles can be avoided as well, which is quite an interesting thing. I mean, you saw me sort of sneak past that big drone earlier on, so you don't necessarily in every situation have to fight. And that's not always going to be applicable, but I mean, certainly, if you do fight, you do get kills, you earn experience points, you can skill up in your trees. So, I mean, there's obviously benefits to that. And in some cases within the story as well, it's kind of expected. You do have to, at least do some form of fighting. You're not just going to be able to have a completely pacifist experience in this, unfortunately. But being able to stay out of eye line is crucial for sure, and using that seniority advantage is so crucial, and being able to get the first strike in battle. And so there's lots of junk to find in the Wasteland. Again, I've mentioned about vending and selling that, but you can also just modify individual weapons as well. So if you've got a favored weapon that you like to use a lot, you can actually change the sights, you can change its ammo clips, you can change its the precision of it. So you don't necessarily have to get rid of your preferred weapon if you really like it, but you can find ways to really improve it over time as well. It's just, honestly, for me, Wasteland 3 was just absolutely, it's great fun. It's full of little surprises. I'm sure there's many more to come as well when we get closer to launch of the game. This beta is great. Actually, it's a very generous beta. I'm only going to show you a small portion of it, but there's actually several hours of content here. So if you are a backer on Fig and you've got access to the beta, you really should check it out. I've actually left it purposely a little bit because I want to experience the full game in full, when it releases. But certainly, that save status will carry across. So if you wanted to play as much as possible of it, you wouldn't have to worry about that. If you just want as much of the experience as possible right now, and there's a decent chunk of it, like I said. There's some good story there to really check out. But again, there's different character types to play around with as well, and again, you can customize fully to make the experience your own. What one little surprise I found with this, perhaps the most for all, is the soundtrack's actually really good. I mean, the graphics are great as well, and the gameplay's great, but the soundtrack's got some nice little boppers in it, and there's a few times where I've kind of been caught me off guard, and I've really enjoyed it. So yeah, it's just one of those nice little surprises you don't necessarily expect to find in games, but yeah, it works really, really well. But I think I've spent enough time with Wasteland 3 now to really not form a full opinion yet, because obviously the full game isn't here, but certainly it made me realise that this is a game that I want on day one. This is a game I want to dive into and just lose hours time to, and it seems like the great time to do that with everything going on in the world right now. But I'm quietly confident that I think Wasteland 3 could be one of the best RPGs this year. In Exile have just really, they've smashed it, and they're continuing to smash it. But that's me actually leveling up there, so you've just seen that the fight is over, so I've leveled up, so you can have a quick look now to see what kind of skills are available to me and what you can do in the context of the game, before I pick up lots of other stuff as well. But yeah, you can buy new skills. So you've got, for instance, the daughter, as I mentioned, she's a proficient sniper, but she's also got some lockpicking experience, bit of mechanics. But then there's different combat skills you can learn as well, like brawl and melee combat, exploration. She's got first aid, she can be a hard ass. Again, those hard ass and kiss asses can kind of like change the dialogue situations, survival tactics as well, how you fare on the field, what you kind of how resourceful you are. Yeah, and I think there's armor modding, things like that, so you can kind of improve your stats and the quality of your armor. So there's all sorts of things to play around with, definitely, and it's typical RPG fare in that regard. Now this little sequence before we close out this video is again going to really show you the elements of choice again, and what you can do, depending on what kind of skill set your character has. And again, the unique properties of both of the characters you'll play as, but also the unique properties of each subset of characters, really just, I think this is going to make this a game that you will want to replay as well, which I think is massive for an RPG. I mean, these RPGs usually go for about 40 to 60 hours a pop anyway. But to want to replay that multiple times as well, dependent on to see what choices you get and to see what what kind of skills that are available to you, dependent on what you choose to specialize in. That's going to be a testament. I think that's going to be a testament to the lastability of Wasteland 3 for sure, and and that's even without, if they do decide to announce any DLC beyond the official launch date. But I mean, seriously, I know we've got next gen around the corner, but with games like this still to come from this current generation, I'm more than happy to wait for the PS5s and Xbox Series X. I mean, this is a game that I'm going to really enjoy and spend a lot of time with. And here goes the hard ass perk. So I've decided, because I have a bit of a hard ass perk, I've just leveled up now. I'm going to go with that just to kind of show you what can happen. And yeah, the major there is just allowing herself to die. But that's going to do it for this video. Hope you enjoyed this preview of Wasteland 3. See you for the next one.